In the earliest age of the world, before regions were named and before Pokémon spread across the land, the environment did not yet exist in any recognizable form. There was no surface to stand on and no sky above. Space extended outward without structure, direction, or scale. Arceus moved through this emptiness. Its form was large and deliberate, resembling a powerful equine body suspended in space. Long legs moved with steady precision, and a grey, wheel-like ring encircled its torso, rotating slowly as if stabilizing the space around it. Its body reflected light even before light fully existed, giving it a defined presence within the void. With Arceus's movement, structure followed. Space condensed into matter beneath its path. A solid surface spread outward, forming a wide foundation of stone that expanded in all directions. Elevation followed soon after. Hills rose gradually and hardened into mountain ranges. Peaks lifted higher as deeper layers of stone locked together, forming land masses that no longer shifted. Water gathered naturally as the terrain settled. Depressions filled first, then widened into seas. Rivers formed from higher ground and carved visible channels through the surface as gravity stabilized. Above the surface, the sky assembled in layers. Clouds formed and held their shape. Light dispersed evenly, separating day from night. Time began progressing in a consistent direction. The land stabilized as Arceus continued reinforcing it. Mountains stopped rising. Rivers held their paths. The surface no longer shifted beneath its own weight. Life emerged once the environment could sustain it. Forests spread across plains and valleys as trees rooted into newly formed soil. Grass covered open ground. Pokémon appeared across the surface, moving cautiously as they adapted to gravity, distance, and terrain. The world functioned as a stable system. Far beneath the surface, that stability triggered a reaction. Within the distortion world, space compressed under growing pressure. This realm had never relied on fixed structure or consistent physics. Chunks of land floated freely, and gravity shifted without warning. Giratina drifted through the unstable environment as fractures began forming across the space itself. The creation of a structured world introduced balance that the distortion world could not absorb. Each stabilized landmass above added strain below. Space folded inward, and floating terrain shattered. The boundary between worlds weakened. A rupture opened above the surface world, centered over a mountain range shaped earlier by Arceus. Clouds stretched violently toward the opening as the sky twisted. Light bent inward as space collapsed under tension. Giratina forced its way through the opening. Gravity snapped back into place with destructive force as its body emerged. The ground below shattered outward. Entire mountains fractured at their bases and collapsed. Rivers surged in reverse as the terrain destabilized. With Giratina's first steps on the surface, the world began failing beneath it. The ground fractured outward in widening rings, and deep fault lines split open across the terrain. Continued movement caused even greater destruction. Mountains broke apart and slid away from their foundations. Peaks folded inward as gravity twisted violently around Giratina's body. Rivers lost their paths as the land shifted. Water surged sideways and upward, spilling into widening chasms. Riverbeds cracked open, and flowing water vanished into empty space where ground no longer existed. Forests collapsed as the soil beneath them disappeared. Entire stretches of woodland fell at once, dragged downward as their foundations failed. Wide scars spread across the surface where land had vanished. The rupture in the sky expanded further as Giratina moved deeper into the world. Clouds stretched violently toward it, pulled by unstable gravity. Light warped as the sky twisted inward. Giratina extended its wings while advancing. The pull toward the distortion world intensified. Hills slid across the surface as if dragged by an unseen force. Valleys stretched and tore as the boundary weakened. A shift in Giratina's body caused space itself to warp. Entire plateaus tilted and broke apart. Large sections of land vanished completely, leaving open voids where ground had existed moments earlier. A direct strike sent a wave of distortion rippling outward. Mountain chains collapsed simultaneously. The ground erased itself in wide arcs, removing entire regions rather than breaking them apart. Gravity fluctuated violently as Giratina continued forward. Objects lifted briefly into the air before slamming back into the surface. Debris spiraled upward and vanished into the rupture above. Coastlines collapsed under the strain. The sea drained unnaturally toward the sky as land gave way beneath it. Water poured into widening gaps and disappeared as the surface lost continuity. The world began losing cohesion. Multiple regions failed at once, and the ground split faster than it could stabilize. The surface struggled to hold its shape. Arceus turned toward the destruction. The rings around its body accelerated as the ground beneath it reinforced itself. Layers of stone formed upward, thickening the terrain under its position. Before Arceus could advance, Giratina struck again. The rupture widened further, and the pull toward the distortion world increased across the region. At that moment, Palkia emerged within the distortions. Spatial barriers formed across the sky, preventing it from tearing completely apart. Moments later, Dialga appeared. Chaotic motion slowed as broken events were forced back into proper sequence. Arceus advanced. Each step restored what had been lost. New ground surged upward where land had vanished. Collapsing terrain reformed into solid stone behind it as quickly as Giratina erased it. The rings around Arceus locked into alignment as it pushed forward through the devastation. Distortion sealed shut along its path, stabilizing the surface moment by moment. Giratina resisted violently, tearing open space repeatedly in an attempt to drag Arceus toward the distortion world. The ground slid violently as gravity pulled in opposing directions. Arceus lowered its head and drove forward, forcing the rupture to destabilize. A concentrated sphere of energy formed in front of Arceus. The surrounding air warped as light bent inward. The sphere grew denser and brighter as contained force accumulated. Arcs of blinding light burst outward from the sphere, striking Giratina repeatedly and driving it backward toward the collapsing boundary. The force carried Giratina through the opening as the distortion world folded inward. The boundary sealed completely. Pressure vanished across the environment. The land stopped shaking. Rivers corrected their paths. Oceans stabilized. Clouds dispersed as the sky returned to stable formation. Scars remained where the damage had been most severe. Cracked stone, warped landforms, and permanently altered regions marked the surface. Arceus remained briefly before turning away. The rings slowed as the world stabilized fully. The surface no longer required intervention. Arceus departed. Within the distortion world, Giratina drifted back into shadow, restrained but not destroyed. The balance held, and the world continued forward.